Thank you, Senator Back. Senator Singh.
Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy President. And I rise to speak against these amendments put forward by Senator Day to weaken our racial discrimination laws in this country. And I do so because I actually see these amendments as an anathema to social inclusion and national unity that this country, at this point in time particularly, is so crying out to achieve. And in fact, I was very pleased to join with so many faith leaders this week here in Parliament House for that National Day of Unity, where representatives from the Muslim, Sikh, Christian, Jewish, Buddhist, Baha'i, so many different faiths came here to Parliament House to stand with us as leaders in our own community, as members of Parliament, to say we stand together against hate speech, we stand together against bigotry, and we stand together to celebrate the diversity and the mutual respect that we engender amongst each other, to foster positive relationships between all faiths and all ethnicities. Why would anyone want to reduce and weaken that bond that we have? Well, that is how I see an attack on our racial discrimination laws, laws that have served this country for the last 20 years very, very well, laws that provide for freedom of speech. We have freedom of speech in this country, and they are provided for within this very piece of legislation that this senator is trying to weaken. They are provided for, as he would be very well aware, in section 18D of this piece of legislation. Now, we have gone through this debate. We have gone through this debate tirelessly under the Abbott government, where we saw very clearly, after an immense amount of community pressure and pressure from the opposition, that the Abbott government, embarrassingly, Tony Abbott himself, the then Prime Minister, had to tell the Attorney-General that his ideals in trying to reduce our racial discrimination laws in this country were a bad step, and he had to withdraw them. Now, of course that was welcomed, very much welcomed by all of those faith leaders, by the community at large. But little did we know that it was going to be temporary. Little did we know that if a senator from another party was to introduce amendments, changes which very much look similar to that were introduced by the Abbott government, that the new Turnbull government wouldn't come out and say, no, we dealt with that. We said that we were not going to weaken our racial discrimination laws in this country, and no, we will not support Senator Day's bill. But that is not what we have had from the new Turnbull government. Now, everyone thought a new broom at the top, it was all going to be different. Well, why doesn't Malcolm Turnbull, the Prime Minister of this country, show that he is different, show that his government is different, and say that the coalition government in this country won't support Senator Day's weakening of our racial discrimination laws? We've had silence. We've had absolute silence from the Prime Minister. Instead, we've had a number of his backbench, a number of individuals in this place particularly, such as Senator Back's contribution just now, and as you as Deputy Acting President, Senator Bernardi, have also made clear your support for the weakening of these racial discrimination laws. So who is to know where this government stands? You are completely divided on this, completely divided. You have some that are still standing firm on the previous government's complete rejection of the attorney's attempt to weaken these laws, and then you have others that are very much in support of bringing it back. Well, that's not good enough. That's not good enough for this country to go forward with. That's not good enough to tell to those faith leaders who need more than ever at this time to know that its government is standing strong and firm with them in support against hate speech. Now, that is what our Racial Discrimination Act provides. It provides very strong and robust provisions, particularly in 18C, that give this multicultural country of ours something to feel strong and proud about. Now, we know that all of those rallies, the petitions, the delegations of community leaders that came to this place meant something. Those of us on this side listened, but it seems that those in government are now willing to turn a blind eye to all of that support for our racial discrimination laws, all of that opposition against what the coalition government was trying to do, completely ignoring all of those leaders, Indigenous leaders, Jewish leaders, Arab leaders, and try and bring these awful amendments back through this place. Well, that is not what you will find from the Labor Party. We stand very firm with all of those faith leaders and those community leaders. We don't want to see racism and bigotry in this country. We don't want to see the likes of Frederick Tobin back, preaching his anti-Holocaust rhetoric. We want to ensure that we have decent and fair laws in this country that deal with hate speech. Now, that is what our Racial Discrimination Act has provided for a very, very long time. Why on earth? What is the motivation behind this particular senator, but behind those senators that want to weaken these laws? What is your motivation? That is what I ask you. Because you cannot say your motivation is to have freedom of speech in Australia, because we have freedom of speech in Australia under this particular law, and you all know it. In section 18D, we have that. We have that. Now, of course, all freedom of speech has to have some limits, because do you really want to live in a country where hate speech is on your doorstep, where it is okay to have the likes of Frederick Tobin go out there and preach his Holocaust-denying awful speech? Well, no, we don't. We do have some limits, but I can tell you that the bow is pretty long when it comes to freedom of speech in relation to race in this country, and those provisions are provided, as I said, in this law. I think it is important to remember that the reason why the then Prime Minister Tony Abbott gave for his change of policy, and it was in August last year, when, in the wake of the emerging crisis in Syria and Iraq, Prime Minister Abbott then admitted that the divisiveness that his government had created, the divisiveness of his government's attack on race-hate protections, was distracting from national security issues. Now, that was the excuse that he gave to abandon the weakening of our racial hate laws. So, in doing so, he, threw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, and that was the end of the weakening of these laws. Well, where do we find ourselves now? We find ourselves now, in fact, in a very similar position, in a position where more than ever we need unity in this country. And I think the recent episodes that have occurred in the last week or so in Victoria and in New South Wales prove that more than ever. So why would anyone come in this place right now and try and weaken the national unity that we have in this law, the social cohesion that is provided in this law? Why would you come in here and want to, open the gates to hate speech at this point in time? It is beyond me. It is beyond me in any circumstance, but it is particularly beyond me at this point in time. Well, Mr Acting Deputy President, Labor stands very firm as I said, in support against extreme hate speech that Section 18C has covered. The Australian people made very clear their opposition to the coalition government's attack on racial hate speech. So my message to Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull is show that you are different then from the previous Prime Minister Tony Abbott. One way that you can at least show that is by rejecting this amendment and standing firm with our faith leaders, with our multicultural communities, and ensuring this law remains strong and robust as it has for the last 20 years.
Thank you, Senator.